Hi, this is an interview with Malte Bruegmann, a visionary entrepreneur and the founder of Avalair and Bruegmann USA. Avalair is a prevalent private jet chartering company based in the greater Houston area, while Bruegmann USA specializes in high quality retail fixtures and display systems. You can find our interview about Mr. Bruegmann on our website, 6degrees.blog, and our Instagram page, 6 Degrees Away. Enjoy the interview.
Okay. So what inspired you to focus on improving the retail shopping experience through your merchandising solutions?
Um, as you guys probably are aware, I grew up in Germany, and I came in 1999 to the US, to California, for like a semester abroad. And as I uh, was kind of experiencing the retail shopping environment in the US, I noticed that the price labeling on the shelf edge, in particular in the US, was different than it was in Germany at the time. And that was I had some awareness of, from kind of some prior activities I was involved with in Germany. So what you would find in the US was that pricing labels were just double adhesive labels that would be adhered to the front of the shelf. In Europe, you had extrusion profiles, plastic extrusion profiles that would hold a paper label that could be much easier changed, and it would create a much better look on the shelf edge. And so that was really where the idea started. I was really just here for 7 months, and then I was supposed to go back to Germany to continue school there. But I actually took that idea and started the concept of the business, if you will.
All right, thank you. So, what are your plans for the future growth of Bruegmann USA, and how do you see the company expanding its influence in the retail industry?
So what my brother and I, who I own the company with my brother, who's my younger brother, what we have been able to do is we have been able to build this company globally. So we're in Asia, we're in Europe, we're in North America, and in each of those markets, we have, by now, after doing this for 20 plus years, we have established a reasonable footprint and relationships in each of these markets. Growth potential lies in building upon the success that we have had with retailers, strengthening those relationships, and growing into new retailers. And so what we're really doing is the success that we have had with um, uh, some of our customers, we're now expanding within those customers and to new customers. And that's kind of where we see our growth.
Thank you. And can you tell us about the patents you've developed and how they have impacted retail environments?
Sure. Well, and just to kind of give you a little bit of a background there, for me, patents uh, uh, can be a part of a business that can set you apart in certain areas. For us, it's really more making sure we're solving the challenges of our customers, providing them with solutions that um, end up giving them value. And if the ideas that we come up with to solve those challenges um, are patentable, we would then pursue a patent. Not in many instances do we create patents into the blue, if you will, where we don't actually look at a challenge and a product development opportunity first because of something that is, seen in the retail environment that can be improved, that is brought to us or understood by us through the customer. And then we go ahead, develop a solution. And if that solution ends up being something where we're like, hey, this really could be protected and could be tied to some intellectual property, we would then pursue that.
Thank you. So, how do you balance the demands of being a CEO with your other interests like aviation?
Um, so balance is a tricky word, because I feel also in today's environment it ends up being kind of overused in parts. As I was starting and building businesses, balance was never part of my thinking or considerations. Starting a business really in any field will demand everything of you. And if you're not committed to that, it will eventually reflect in the success of the business and the progress. So for me, um, the balance really starts happening once you accomplish some success. Once you get to a certain level, you can afford to kind of remove yourself from some of the day-to-day operations, which will then give you a little more balance in your life. But I think going into it, asking for balance as from an entrepreneurial perspective, uh, can be a challenge.
Thank you. And what inspired you to start Avalair, and how has your military experience shaped its vision?
So I have had a lifelong passion for aviation. I grew up in a small town in Germany that had a glider airport right really within a mile and a half of it. I was always interested in airplanes, and so I eventually started flying gliders, and then kind of progressed from there, and flew powered aircraft, and started towing gliders, started competing in gliders, and um, there was always this idea that formed in me probably in my mid 20s as I was progressing through kind of the aviation ladder, if you will, that I wanted to start a charter company at some point. And so the inspiration is really the love for the aviation, and then it became very concrete when a friend of mine here in Houston, who was a professional pilot for a family, um, we were talking over lunch one day, and he had similar ideas and visions, and we pretty much said, "Hey, let's do this together and start a charter company."
Thank you. So, what drew you to competitive aviation, and how did you first get involved in Renault air races?
Right. So this is obviously somewhat of a very special part of aviation that only that maybe a few crazies have access to and are willing to participate in. I'm generally somebody who loves competing, loves watching competitions, and enjoys intense activities, if you will. So I was competing in gliders. As I mentioned earlier, I competed in gliders when I moved to the US. It turned out that soaring or gliding is a very time intensive activity that once we had 3 children was just tough to manage, because it would literally take most weekends away. And so I decided to move away from competing in gliders. And after I sold kind of my stake in gliders and hangars, I pursued, or I was looking for a way to still fly for fun, but make it to where it will only take about 2 hours out of my day when I choose to do it. And so I bought an L-39 light fighter aircraft that I was trained in by an F-16 pilot, an Air Force pilot here from Houston. He was heavily involved into the Reno air races, and he then asked me if I would be interested in participating, and I was very lucky and fortunate to be able to participate in the last 3 runnings or years of the Reno Air races that have now officially concluded as of 2023.
Thank you. And just to touch a little bit more on the competitions, what does the role of a pace pilot involve, and how does it contribute to the success of air racing events?
So thinking of the pace pilot and the pace airplane, since we do not have a start from a standstill in airplanes, that is somewhat difficult. We do air start, so we are airborne, and the pace plane becomes the start line, if you will. So the extension of my wing spar in the air becomes the start line. So we actually fly 6 to 8 airplanes off our wing in formation that end up in a line abreast next to my airplane. And as we approach the area where the race will start, we will guide all competitors to be aligned next to my wing. And once we have accomplished that, we will say the famous words of, gentlemen, you have a race. And at that point, we are pulling up and away from the racers, and the racers then go onto the course where they're racing at speeds of up to 500 miles an hour at roughly 50 feet above the ground. As we pull up, we will then go into an orbit above the racers, and we change from a pace plane to a chase plane, which means that any emergency that happens to any of the racing airplanes, we will be there to support them to resolve that emergency, which usually would be an engine failure or something where they pull off the course, and we make sure that there's no fire, that there's no parts detaching from the aircraft and such, and like just be another set of eyes for them. Once the race is over, all the racing planes land in order. Generally, they have crossed the finish line, and then we land last to make sure that everybody is on the ground safely.
Thank you. So how do you approach teamwork and leadership in high pressure situations, whether it's in the business or in the cockpit?
It's actually a great question to kind of relate the two. And what I can say, what kind of is very similar between the cockpit environment and a professional business environment, is that preparation is the key to deal with challenges. And you see that in the cockpit in unusual emergency situations where you want to fully understand what to do in those scenarios. And the same goes for business environments, to where when challenges face you in business that are not always 100% predictable, but you obviously want to be prepared to the best amount possible to deal with those. And in addressing those challenges, you have to make sure that you communicate to the point, you create open and honest conversations, and always make sure you fact check yourself and the team to not go into a direction that may not be helpful.
Thank you. And how does Avalair stand out in the competitive jet chartering market?
Also a very good question. The jet chartering market is definitely a competitive environment. I am convinced, however, that if you provide value to your customers in this particular environment by delivering safe and reliable air transportation, and this is a big part of this business, you need to be consistent and you need to be reliable, and you do it at a fair price, you will build that word of mouth and that reputation within the people that fly privately, and that has been somewhat our route to success, is that people trust us to do it safe and reliably.
Thank you. And how do you see the aviation industry evolving, and where do you envision Avalair in that future?
The aviation industry as a whole, I think over the next couple decades particularly, will see some significant changes, and some of those obviously driven by the incredibly fast-moving advancements in technology. From an Avalair perspective, our goal for the next few years will be to become really the local leader in air charter in Houston. And as we establish ourselves in that position, consider expanding the same concept into new markets, like, let's say, Austin or Denver, for example.
Thank you. And what legacy do you hope to leave in both the retail and aviation industries?
So that's a little bit of a tough one. It's hard for me to really make that about myself, because there's a lot of people involved to create what Bruegmann and what Avalair is representing. So I'm really hoping that people that are part of Bruegmann or Avalair, meaning customers, vendors, or employees, that they can say that Bruegmann or Avalair provided value to them and gave an opportunity for them to advance personally or professionally. That would really be what I would hope the legacy of our companies will be.
Thank you. And then we have two final questions, which we ask all of our interviewees. So that would be, what advice would you give to your younger self? Is the first one. And then our second is, what does success look like for you?
Yeah. So, what advice would I give to myself? I obviously started very young, when I was 23 years old. And you obviously make a lot of decisions that, looking back, you could have probably improved upon. But I always feel that it's better to make a decision and make the wrong decision than not to make a decision. And that's why it's hard for me to say, would I give that advice to myself? I probably would keep that the same way, because you also learn from making wrong decisions. The one thing, and this is very personal, I am somewhat of an intense personality that has led to me maybe not always listening to my body the way I should have, be it recovery from injury and such. So the advice to my young self would probably be, take it a little easier on your body. And then the last question that you mentioned is, what does success look like to you? That obviously evolves very much over time. When I started out, success was, the survival or the achievement of small steps to kind of establish yourself on a course of success. Today it looks very different. Today, it's, for me, it's about do something that you enjoy, create opportunities for others. I really feel very strongly that the people that participate or work with me in our companies are who I who I in large parts do this for. So it is something that gives me a lot of joy when I see people within our organizations become successful in their own way. And then also, since my initial 20 years of doing this were very time intensive, being able to spend more time with family is definitely something that I consider a success today.
Thank you so much.